Alright, let's understand the importance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-day visit to Moscow, Russia, his first foreign visit after taking over as Prime Minister for the third time. The first one is the optics. The fact that Prime Minister is going to Russia, while earlier in his stints after taking over as Prime Minister, he focused on neighboring countries, Bhutan in 2014 and Maldives in 2019, shows or tells the Russians that India is treating them with a lot of importance. Now, this is important because otherwise, if you look at the geopolitical situation, Russia is almost being treated like a pariah state by the larger West, and an attempt has been made over the last couple of years since the start of the Ukraine war to isolate President Putin by the Western leadership. In that context, for India and Prime Minister Modi to be visiting Moscow on his first visit abroad is a statement that whatever the West says, we value this old relationship and partnership, and we are with you. Now, why this old relationship or partnership is important? The reason is that Russia is a traditional ally, and historical friendship exists between the two sides. India depends a lot, even now, for its defense equipment on Russia. It has been tapering off, but then whatever platforms we have, a good number of them still are of Russian vintage. Till about 5 years back, about 60 or 70% of India's military equipment was Russian. It has tapered off, it has come down to maybe almost 1/3, a little more than that, but that still does not take away from the fact that from Sukhois to BrahMos and a lot of things in between, including our tanks, a lot of Russian military hardware is there, including, for example, the submarines in the Navy and at least one aircraft carrier. So in that sense, engaging with Russia is important. And apart from that, there is the second leg of this very important relationship, which is India's energy security. As it happens, over the last couple of years, Russia has become almost the #1 supplier of crude because of its cheaper availability from them. And that really gives you an idea or underscores how important Russia is between defense and our energy security. Overall, India-Russia trade stands at $65 billion, of which almost $60 billion or thereabout is India's import of Russian stuff, essentially crude, and that underscores also a balance of payment situation, which perhaps would be on the table which obviously would be on the table when President Putin and Prime Minister Modi have that important summit. So that's about India's and Russia's bilateral aspect. Then there is another important aspect why Prime Minister has chosen to make Moscow its first port of call, which is that of late, because Russia has been isolated by the larger West because of the Ukraine war, and also because there is stress, economic stress because of that war, Russia has been increasingly leaning towards Beijing. And just about 2 months back, when President Putin was in China, the pictures really spoke for themselves in terms of who was the boss, with the manner in which Russian president was, it does not happen often, but Putin was very, very, I won't say submissive, but still engaging with President Jinping in a manner that gave away as to who's really the senior partner. So in a way, Prime Minister Modi meeting President Putin in Moscow is also about making sure that while Russia leans towards China or leans increasingly on China, it does not become an anti-India axis. So it's very important that Russia does not forget its old relationship, and that's the reason why Prime Minister is there. Moving on, from optics point of view, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi are meeting in Moscow on a day when NATO summit has started in Washington, D.C. So it's part of larger process going on in NATO with a change of leadership from Jens Stoltenberg to Mark Rutte of Denmark. But what is important is that West has, over the last couple of years, leaned on India to make us have some distance or create some distance with Russia. So in that sense, the Western leadership might not like Prime Minister Modi going and meeting in Moscow, and if they might also in fact want that India lean on Russia to sort of come to the negotiation table on the ongoing Ukraine war. Now, those are international geopolitical, geostrategic dynamics at play, but India doing a fine balancing act. Remember, Prime Minister Modi did travel to Italy after taking over for a multilateral format, which was the G7 summit, where he was a special invitee, and he engaged with all the leaders, including meeting President Zelensky of Ukraine. So in a way, India can say that while we have met Zelensky first, it's time to meet President Putin, and in that sense, India, for all we know, might play some role, a very crucial role by way of communication at least, in calming down things insofar as the war in Europe is concerned. And there has been an escalation building up. And if this communication, first between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky, then between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, if it sort of helps give better perspective to both the sides, why not? That's another very important takeaway insofar as Prime Minister visiting Moscow is concerned. What's in it for Moscow? Yes, of course. The fact that someone as big a leader as Narendra Modi is visiting Moscow in the face of all the attempts at isolating it from the rest of the world is concerned, I think Russians would be very happy that Prime Minister has swum against the tide and come visiting on his first trip abroad. So that's an important takeaway so far as Russians are concerned. Of course, Viktor Orban of Hungary has also visited last week, and interesting because he's just taken over as the President of the European Union Council, which means interesting times ahead for global geopolitics with all the changes taking place.